Hey everyone, Planet SM, welcome to part 3 of our Model Factory Hero 112 Ferrari 250 GTO. So yes, we are leading on from the first 2 episodes that we delved into the first stages of the engine work. And we're going to continue that today in part 3 and very shortly part 4 where we'll get this all together and done. So yes. So today we're going to start with a bit of cleanup of some parts. We're going to get all the parts ready for primer. We've got some soldering to do as well. The first time we're going to do some proper soldering because unlike the farce of the roll cage on the Lancia, I have the proper iron now. I have a variable temperature iron, the proper flux, the proper solder, and you're going to sit there and watch my first exploits in soldering, which they go okay, I think. They're not too bad. They're certainly not as bad as last time, so hopefully we can progress from it and you can see what it's like to solder stuff to white metal. It'd be interesting anyway. So let's jump over the build and get started. Okay, so we're back with part 3 of the Model Factory Hero 250 GTO engine. Today we've got lots of fiddly jobs to do. It's going to take us 2 parts to not really do a whole amount of work, but there's a whole lot of cleanup required. So we're here today with our Weber carburetors. We've got our files in there to clean up all the excess swarf, seam lines, mist molds, you name it, and then we go in with our UMP thinny sponge to clean it all up and try and make as good a finish as we possibly can out of the white metal. Obviously, white metal, it's a bit rough to begin with, so it does take a bit of work. The cleanup alone on this was several hours over a couple of days. It just took forever cleaning all this up. It was a bit boring, monotonous, but it's part of the fun of the kit. So, you know, when things get monotonous, it does get a bit boring, but it's quite satisfying to do at the same time. You're taking bits of metal that don't really fit together, then you're drilling out, filing, cleaning, fettling to make them fit. And it is good fun to do. It's part of the fun of building these kits. So these are the intake manifolds. And I'm just going to check how they fit in place, which wasn't too bad at all. Just needed weighing up and pushing in place. And there we go, actually fitted quite well. And then we're going to drill them out in preparation for putting the actual carb manifold itself on there. So we've got our drill bit in there with our pin vise. And like I say, the cleaner continues. There's lots to do. Like I say, we're basically dealing with these components here today and then several more coming later up. I did plan to work on them separately and do 2 separate videos in each part, but in the end I opted to just work on it all together. Some of the worst parts are on the distributors, on the distributor housing. There was loads of excess white metal, so I opted for a milling bit and the Proxon and sat there and just gently ground it away until I got rid of the majority. Very messy job, covered in white metal swarf and dust, and yeah, pretty horrific stuff to work with, but it is quite malleable. It's quite easy to work with. You don't need to apply any real pressure, just let the Proxon do its job and just work your way around. Once we've done that, we came with the file again and cleaned it all up as good as possible. So like I say, several hours here over a couple of days. I reckon 7-8 hours of cleanup on this. It took me quite some time to do and some morning live streams. But I think the result's worth it. You have a look at the end of part 4 and tell me, was all this work worth it? So there's the first batch of parts all cleaned up. I'm just cleaning up all my parts. There's another destroyed UMP sander covered in swarf and rubbish and whatnot. We then got a whole host of holes to drill. So one of the larger ones using our Proxon with a foot pedal. I think I've got like a 0.8mm bit in this because we've got 2 pieces of pipe, metal, what we call it, metal pipe to go in the top where the carbs sit. So it's a case of just drilling it out slowly, nice and carefully. If you get any binding on the drill bit whatsoever, take it straight back out, clean it, and then drill again, because if it's binding, it's getting clogged up with white metal and it'll snap. And that's because I know it will, because mine snaps. As you can see there, just clean it out. If you get any stubborn bits, get your knife and just gently rub it over the drill bit. And it will get all the bits out, and you'll notice it'll instantly drill a lot better straight away. So just take your time, don't rush it, you don't be snapping bits, it's a pain. I spent about £50 on drill bits for this project, and they're all basically 0.5mm bits because they're the ones that seem to snap the most. Just take your time. While we're on at this, I've got my Optivisor here. This is a Tamiya Optivisor. A lot of people ask what I use. I don't tend to show it, so this is their Optivisor. They're not cheap, and they're quite hard to find. They run about £100. I've used some of the cheaper ones. This is by far the most comfortable because it doesn't sit on your nose. There's a little pad at the front there that rests on your forehead, and then the other piece sits behind your ear. You can wear them with glasses, like I do, no problem at all. It comes with 3 lenses. I think it's 0.7, 1 and 2, and great tool. And this is my soldering iron, another new tool as well. We're going to solder some white metal today. First time doing this. If you remember the calamity you had with the roll cage on the Lancia, this time we've got a fully adjustable Weller soldering iron. Again, not a cheap tool, but a worthy investment. We've got the proper flux, which I'm just putting on here. And we've got the low temperature solder as well. So this is my very first time using it. So the low temperature solder, you get that little block there. It's about £8. It's quite expensive, but it's low melt. And then we've just got the temperature, the iron on the temperature. Sorry, the temperature on the iron is about 120 degrees C. I did find it worked better a bit higher. But for my first go, I'm just popping it on and seeing how it reacts. Now, I did find it was better to load up the iron a little bit further back and get a touch more solder on there. And that way, as soon as you apply it to the white metal, the flux just capillary flows it instantly. So, like I say, first time using it, so a little bit of a noob. And we've got my exploits here in full, showing you everything today. But I'm just trying to join those two pieces together. So I'm just gently touching it. Letting the flux and the already preheated solder on the iron do its job. Really nice soldering iron from Weller. Thank you to Jamie Beat and Alan Parker for recommending this one. And if you get stuck finding these, drop me a message and I'll give you a link. And if I remember, I'll put a link in the video for you down below. But we're just testing it to see how it joined up these parts, getting used to the heat and what have you. And after I tried that, I thought, right, let's try and join these two spare valves we have, because if I can solder something this small and thin, I can solder pretty much anything. So we've got an old brush, pop some flux on, got the iron, we're going to load it up with a little bit of solder. So we just touch it on there, get a little bit on the iron, there we go, and then just touch it on the part. So we're not really trying to get any heat into the white metal, we're just trying to get the solder off the iron. So it's a case of just touch it, let it flow, a quick blow on it and it should instantly dry. And there we go. Perfectly soldered, pretty strong as well, nice strong joint. Yeah, that'll do me. So a couple of test pieces are alright. I thought we'll try it again. I put the heat up a little bit higher this time. So a little dab more flux. Like I say, this is a lesson in soldering today, so there's a bit, so bear with me because I'm going to show a lot of it in use. It's my first time using it. Just getting off a little bit of XX flux there because I put an absolute ton on there. And again, we load up the iron. Obviously, if you're a pro solderer, don't be judging me what I'm doing. I'm used to using a blowtorch on pipes when I used to be a plumber. But I do start to get the knack of it a little bit as we progress with the build. There we go. So there we go. There's a physical join done. And again, you can reheat it very quickly if you're careful. And there we are. Right, so the first bit we're going to try is our distributors. So the top housing, the actual distributor itself, is going to be a different colour. We're going to do that in a real dark brown colour. But the bottom part, these bits here, we're going to solder these together. So we've made sure they are aligned correctly where they want. We've got some flux on there, like so. We've got some white tack holding the part so they don't move around. We've got our iron, again running about 150. I think I was running about 150, 160. A little bit of solder. A quick touch, not enough. So just grab a little bit more, like that, there we go. And then a quick touch. Like I say, it's a complete learning curve. I'm snagged on my cable there. But there we go. That's flowed into the panel line or the gap perfectly. Flip it round and do the back. And again, load the solder up a little bit on the iron. There we go. And then just touch it to it. And there we go. Get the excess solder, you can reheat it and wipe it off. But yeah, I'm happy with that. It's not perfect by any means. There's a little bit of excess solder there, but the joint is soldered. We need to give all this a real good clean up again. So we'll hit it with some UMP sanders, get the files on them again, and get everything as smooth as possible. Several more holes to drill. This is the fuel rail, so just a couple of holes to drill in either end here. We've got my little Hiro Amazon battery powered drill here. We don't need anything big or powerful there. And then all those parts are now mounted, ready for primer. So we're in the, they said display case then. We're in the spray booth. We've got some acid etch primer. We've got my Water HPC Plus. And we're going to put down a couple of coats of this on all the parts. And just give them a nice acid etch grey prime. This way we know everything's going to stick to the white metal. We shouldn't have any paint problems. It worked really well on the Lancia. And we're going to continue that on the Ferrari. Because I think the continuity is good. Like I say, solder parts, it looks so much better soldered than glued. It's a lot cleaner. Gives a proper joint. Especially on things like the gearbox, which we'll do later on. Really does make a difference. Obviously, these white metal parts, they need a lot of cleanup. So, take your time on them. Do as good a job as you possibly can. Oh, and don't spill your paint like that. Yep. I had dry paint on my thumb. It stuck to the bottle. As I picked it up, it knocked the bottle over. So, that primer is now dry on the bench and on the model. And we've got some Mr. Servicer 1500 black. And we're going to give all the parts that we need to a quick coat of 1500 black primer. Most of these are going to be metallic. So we want a nice gloss black. Well, not gloss black, but we want a nice black base for them. So like I say, just a couple of quick coats and my job done. And then while they dry, I thought, you know what, let's clean up the rest of the parts. So we've got our exhausts. They need soldering together with their flanges. We've got the gearbox, which is a massive piece that all needs soldering. There's the flanges for the exhausts as well. Got the instructions on the bench, trying to figure out what on earth I'm doing and why did I get this kit. I'm only joking. And again, lots of cleanup, lots of fettling to get everything to fit. So it's a case of get the worst of the white metal off, clean up with a sander, and then try and assemble things and see how they go together. You may find you need to alter a few parts, manipulate a few parts, file a few parts. We've got holes to drill as well. A whole range of cleanup. I'm not going to bore you with it all. And then onto the exhaust, we've got seam lines to clean up. So basic cleanup is clean up with the file, get the majority of the white metal off that is excess. I'm just using some cheap Tamiya basic files that do the job perfectly. And then we go out with the UMP 220 sponge sander, which does a great job and brings the smoothness back to the metal. So don't be afraid of having a drink while you're working as well. Glug glug. There we go. And yeah, the cleanup's pretty good. Very monotonous, very dirty as well. And I tell you now, if you didn't use a magnetic tumbler, your fingers would be 10 times dirtier. The first time I did the cleanup on the Lancia, I didn't have a tumbler and I was absolutely covered in this stuff. It just gets absolutely everywhere. Now we've got the gearbox kind of together. I've just put a little tack solder on that top piece to hold it. I'm just going to have a little bit of play. And again, bear in mind, I'm new to this. We get better as we go, trust me. I'm just trying to infill all the joints. Now, I know I'm not going to get these perfect with just the iron. So I know I'm going to have to file and solder these. So again, we're getting the flux in where we need it. We're loading the solder onto the iron and just touching it and letting it flow. So there you go, like that. I know I'm going to have to sand these by the nature of it. But like I say, I get better. And then some of the later parts, it's all nice and smooth and doesn't require any sanding. But it is a learning curve. So I filled those bits first with solder. I then hit them with the file to get the most of the excess solder. And then hit it with the sponge sander to clean up as good as possible. Underneath, we're just loading up this joint here. You can see the gaps either side. One side is bigger than the other. This it took a little bit of manipulation to get it to fit. I had to do a little bit of sanding and filing and what have you. It was a little bit wide on one side. But again, we just get a bit of flux in there, load the solder onto the iron. And you'll see now I'm getting a little bit better because we fill all that almost in one go. Just get a little bit of excess there. There we go. Nice neat job. Perfect, that'll do me. There's a little bit more at the end. There we go. And a little bit more on the other side. It's tricky to do. It is when you're not used to doing it, which I'm not. Like I say, I'm good at brazing pipes with a blow lamp, with plumbing or copper pipe. That's what I did my job for nearly 20 years. But I'm getting the hang of this. And the more we do, the better we'll get. Which certainly beats gluing. It's a lot neater. It's going to be a lot stronger as well. It's certainly going to look better. You can see the join on the bottom there, where I've already cleaned that up, and it looks really good. On this part, I've put some flux underneath the part to help any action, capillary action. And yeah, it needs a little bit of fettle in this as well, so I thought I'll get it tacked down one side. Get our flux on. The flux is one of the most important components here to what helps the solder flow. Load the iron up and then just touch it. Let the heat quickly transfer. It's so much easier this way. If I would have had this iron and all this flux and solder and I was doing that roll cage, it would have been a piece of cake. I was doing it the hard way with normal solder, with a really hot iron. And this way is so much easier. It really is. As I say, getting the knack of it there, filling them almost perfectly. So don't be afraid of doing this. If you got one of these kits, invest in a good soldering iron. This one wasn't cheap. This was on Amazon for £150. But Weller are a very well known brand. It's fully adjustable temperature wise. Really good high quality iron. And the solder is about £9 and the flux is about the same. So yeah, it's worth a dabble. If you're thinking about it, I would give it a go. And things like this bell housing on the gearbox, it's a big part. This took quite a bit of careful soldering. And I just deal with one section at a time, one side at a time. Just getting the solder. And at this point, I'm just trying to be as neat as possible to minimize the amount of cleanup. And just working our way around, fluxing as we go. And like I say, you can see that joint there, that gap. Hopefully it should just disappear in a second. There it goes, gone. Then we can carry that down all across the joint. And it'll give us a nice clean finish. Like I say, if you get better, you'll have no cleanup to do as well. It'll just be done from the soldering. There we go. We've got our alternator, dynamo, whatever you want to call them. I don't know what they're called back then. It's an alternator for me. We've got a couple of components. We've got this bracket that needs soldering in place. So it's been drilled out, and we're going to just quickly dab a couple of quick pieces of solder in there to hold the bracket in place. So again, nice and simple, a lot quicker, although it did move then. We'll get it back in a second. Needs a little bit more heat, that one. Some of the bigger parts, the thicker parts, just need a little bit more heat to get the solder to flow. Like I say, we're not trying to heat up the white metal too much. We're just trying to transfer it across to the flux. So we just want to be quick. Get it all in place, and then there's this little bracket here as well that attaches onto the first piece. A little wipe of flux. Load up the solder. Now, be neat with your solder. I was hitting this all over the place. Man looks like the Terminator. I Terminator 2 when he's been shot with a shotgun or the grenade launcher. Yeah, just go with the corner. You don't need to keep going in the middle like I was. But that solder, even though it's not a lot, it looks like I've used a lot, I've hardly used any at all. It's going to go a long way, that solder. There we go. We put all that to one side. We're going to drill out the exhaust manifolds now with our Proxon. Again, we should have done this first time round, but hey, it is what it is. We're doing it now. And then we've got to solder our exhaust. So I've held the two parts together on the bulldog clip. You can see the seam of the part right there where I put the flux, and all the way around underneath. And again, we're just going to solder it as good as possible. So hold it in a comfortable way, load up the solder on the tip, just run it through. And again, we'll give it a bit of a clean up at the end. Sorry about that out of focus shot. My camera doesn't like going close sometimes. It's a bit of a pain. And it dries mega quick. Just blow on it. You'll see it change colour and it's dry. And then we've got the seam underneath at the back. So you can see where the piece fits in. You've got to be careful here. Make sure you get the correct pieces in the right orientation. So test fit, test fit, test fit as always. The main rule of building these kits. And then just go over the seams until they disappear. Like I said, we're going to sand these back anyway. We'll get them nice and smooth. And again, before we commit to that, we give it a little bit of a test fit just to make sure. We might need to manipulate some of the pipes a little bit. They did need moving around a touch, but they fit in place quite well. And then the flange. So the two of them go in one place. They can only go in one orientation, so they're quite easy to put on and orientate the correct way. The other one, because it's a singular one, it goes a particular angle. You've got to pop it on, weigh it up where it goes, and get the right angle. And there we go. The flanges are in place. I'm getting better at this now. Getting a lot more confidence in using it. Just literally running it over, and the solder's flowing really nice and easy. And soldering all those pieces perfectly. Again, apologies for being out of focus. Like I always say, sometimes the work I'm doing takes precedence over the filming, because I'm really concentrating on what I'm doing, but I'm trying to get in there close enough for you guys to see. So sometimes what I'm doing takes over from the filming. So like I say, this single flange needs angling because of where it attaches to the engine itself. It goes on an angle. You can see it there. It's just not quite the right angle. So get it in place, get your flux on, hit it with some solder quick. Then another little test fit. Perfect. And then clean up. Again, we've hit it with the file, and then we hit it with the UMP 220 sponge sander. Clean it up to a nice high shine finish. There we go. That'll do me, and just a little bit of excess solder at the bottom as well. So clean it up. Like I say, it's much neater, much quicker than glue. Now these have all been primed in the Acid Etch again and hit with the Mr. Surfacer 1500 like we did the first time. We're going to paint the gearbox with Mr. Hobby Superfine Silver. Somebody asked me, it was Justin. Hey Justin, thanks for your question, mate. I will get back to you on YouTube. Apologies for being a bit late. What was the point in painting it? We thought the point to get the white metal was the realistic metal look. A couple of things. I don't think it looks realistic enough as white metal. There's a lot of flaws to cover up. And I think the primer does help cover up the flaws. And number two, I want to get my money's worth out of my model. So I do want to paint it. Otherwise, you could just leave everything the same colour and it just look a monotone block of metal. I can understand where you're coming from to a degree, but once you get it all weathered up, painted and what have you, it actually looks pretty good. So if you want to build it and leave it in white metal, you can. For me, I opted to paint it all. We've done the engine in superfine silver. The exhaust were done in flat white. I did these in superfine silver as well. And then we're hitting it with some Mr. Hobby, not Mr. Hobby, Alcalad Sepia. And that's what we're going to hit those with. Now, I wasn't particularly happy with the colour originally, because I did it in Mr. Hobby Dark Iron. Wasn't happy with the colour, so I stripped it. When I sprayed this on, it was a little bit too dark than I wanted. And I thought, right, I'm going to strip it right back and start again. So I stripped it back all the way to bare metal from the Mr. Hobby. and then just hit it with the alclad as you saw there in the sepia. But I put a little bit too much on. This is kind of a lucky accident here. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe it over with a cotton bud with Mr. Hobby lacquer thinner, leveling thinner, and take off as much as I can, but leave it all in the recesses. So it's like pre-washed. I thought if I do that and then just very lightly dust over the same paint, I'll get the tone that I want for the carbs. So that's what I did. One light coat all round. You'll see me compare it next to a standard piece in a second. And I've got the perfect colour I was happy with. We're going to leave this here today. We'll be back for part 4 very soon, where we'll get all this together on the engine and get our engine to the stage where we're ready for the bodywork. There we are. That's where we're going to leave that today. Loads of footage, like 12 hours of footage on this one to get to this stage. Yes, lots and lots of cleanup. Absolutely ridiculous amount of cleanup, but it's part and parcel of these kits, and it's part of the fun of building them. The soldering, I was very apprehensive about after melting part on the Lancia, but it went really well. A few of the earlier parts, a little bit ropey, yes. I got better as I went. I think I can only get better as I go. You get used to doing it. You know how much solder to put on. You know how quickly to apply it. And it is going to make work a lot easier on this. Whether it's faster, I think gluing's faster because it's easier, obviously. But the finish is much better and it's much stronger to do as well. I think it's going to come into its own with parts on the suspension because I'm probably going to make some sort of jig to make sure everything sits lined up correctly. And I think the instant set of the solder will be a dividend, a bonus. I can also unsolder things to move them if needed. So if you're thinking of soldering white metal, certainly give it a go. Get a decent iron. This Weller one's a good one. I didn't skimp. But, you pay for good tools, and that's what we got there. So hope you enjoyed my first foray into soldering. I did. Actually quite good fun to do. A little bit nerve-wracking. But we can come back for part 4 very soon and get the all these components together and get this engine finished off, and we can move on to the next stage of the build, which is the chassis. Starting on the chassis. So very exciting. So there we go. As always, if you'd like to support these videos, there's a Patreon me link down below. There's loads of perks and benefits to becoming a patron. Early access on the videos, exclusive builds, etc, etc. Have a look at the perks down below if you wish to support them. There's a buy me a coffee and a PayPal link if you want to make donations directly. Your donations and support keep me going on these. There's also links down there to everything social media related to me. There's UMP Retail, the forum, the Facebook page for International Scale Modeler, my personal modelling page, my scale mates, there's an email address to get in touch with me as well should you wish. And everything to do with the live shows, the Off Air Hangout groups, etc. is all down there. And as always, make sure you sub to the channel, click the video, the thumbs up on the video, click the bell notifications to get notified of all the latest videos, and leave a comment. Love reading all your comments and your feedback on the build. It's what spurs me along. So if you've got any comments or questions, drop me a message, or if you want a link to those soldering items, I'll try and remember to put them in the description down below. And if not, drop me a message and I'll sort it out. There we go. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day, everyone. Take care. We'll be back with part 4 very soon because it's already filmed. There we go. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.